There we go. All right. Big crowd tonight, geez. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Benjamin Johnson. I'm the event coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers here in Saskatoon. On behalf of McNally Robinson and the University of Regina Press, we're grateful for your support this evening. This event is being held on Treaty 6 territory, which is the land of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. As we listen to our speakers share their words today, may we recognize the Indigenous voices that have been shared on this land since time immemorial. A few housekeeping notes. Please be aware that this event is being live streamed and that there's a webcam off to your right. Please take this moment to silence your phones for the duration of the event. And finally, if you'd like to purchase a copy of wîhtamawik or one of Louise or Lisa's other poetry books / novels, you can find them at the front by where you came in or behind me on the signing table. You're welcome to have them signed, but please also pay for those on your way out. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of author and kêhtê-aya elder Louise Bernice Halfe Sky Dancer's new volume of never before collected essays and never before published poems, wîhtamawik, Tell Them, on a life of inspiration. Here, in many different moments, texts, voices, and styles, Louise recounts the tale of how she woke up from the trauma of separation and found the lasting source of her inspiration, her culture, and the land with which it is so intimately linked. In Cree, inspiration is described as a sudden insight. It can come from visits from spirit, from the charged reciprocal experience of being taught by elders and teaching the next generation, from the very speaking of Cree, which Louise describes as allowing her to somersault into memory, and from the practice of being in relationship with the land, which she observes constantly gives birth to itself. Wîhtamawik, Tell Them, is a stunning love song to nêhiýaw ways of knowing, ways Louise has spent her life working to reclaim from the violence of colonization. A little bit about our presenters, both of whom have a lot of accolades, so bear with me. Louise Bernice Halfe Sky Dancer is an acclaimed nêhiýaw Plains Cree poet and writer from Saddle Lake First Nation in Alberta. She has been the recipient of multiple awards and appointments for her work, including the Saskatchewan Centennial Medal, Saskatchewan Provincial Poet Laureate, Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal, Canadian Parliamentary Poet Laureate, King Charles III Coronation Medal, and member of the Order of Canada. Tonight, Louise will be joined in conversation by fellow author Lisa Bird Wilson, a Saskatchewan Métis and nêhiýaw writer whose work appears in literary magazines and anthologies across Canada. Lisa is a founding member and former chair of the Saskatchewan Aboriginal Writers Circle Incorporated. Her most recent book, Probably Ruby, is published internationally, was a finalist for the Governor General's Literary Award, was shortlisted for the Amazon First Novel Award, and won 2 Saskatchewan Book Awards, including Book of the Year. Her short story collection, Just Pretending, was a finalist for the National Danube Lead Literary Award and won 4 Saskatchewan Book Awards, including the 2014 Book of the Year. In 2019, it was selected to be the Saskatchewan One Book, One Province campaign choice to promote reading across the province. Lisa is the CEO of Sask Arts and the former CEO of the Gabriel Dumont Institute, Canada's first Métis post-secondary education and cultural institute. Lisa and Louise will discuss the collection and how it came about. Louise will give a reading from her book, and then Lisa and Louise will conclude their conversation and open the floor to questions. And I hope you do have questions, or I'm just going to be standing there awkwardly and it's going to be a rough time. Please help me welcome Louise and Lisa.
Thank you, Ben. Danse, good evening. Well, I'm really pleased to be here and in conversation with you about your new and beautiful work, Louise. I want, first of all, to say merci or thank you for this beautiful book. I am really blown away by these new poems and these essays and the insights and the reflections that are collected here, and seeing all of these pieces together in one book and also in relation to one another. There's a lot of eloquence there in seeing those pieces together and reading them. And I read your book way too quickly in getting ready for, coming here and being here tonight. But it's a book that I will go back to and sit with and spend time meditating on and making notes. And it's just so rich. And as a reader, it's very rich, but also as an Indigenous author, it's very much a gift. So I just want to say merci and thank you for, for the gift of this book. So I do have some questions here, and so I'll just jump into the first one if that's okay. So this new book combines styles and genres, poetry, essay, presentations, and it does so in a way that feels cohesive and complementary. And as I said, that the pieces are in relationship to one another. Can you talk a bit about what led you to this project at this time? What was your vision? What drove you in this project?
That's easy. First of all, I want to thank everybody here that have come to listen to this reading. And ganaskum nao gatyo and betakake it's such a cold evening, and you're so brave to come out and face the elements. So thank you for your attendance. Well, that was an easy question. University of Regina Press had been after me for many years to come up with something for them, and I really didn't know what to give them because I'm a poet. So I said to them, I've got a bunch of presentations and essays that I've collected over the years. Why don't we work on that? And so they said, go for it. So that's how the book came about. It wasn't something that I really thought about, yeah.
I do very much appreciate the way that it came together and that it, the way that it's organized and kind of flows in that sort of chronological kind of a way.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a couple of observations here about things that stood out for me. So the themes that really stood out in this collection, are the importance of our connection and connectedness to land, to the earth, and that also that sense of reclamation. So there's a line or an image that stuck with me around our people like bears hunched over gathering our roots, like that reclamation kind of an image. I thought that was very powerful. And then within all of that, the connection between our bodies and the land and the language, the Cree language, so that you have a spot in there where you're talking about that connection, and you talk about the Cree word for red and the blood, the connection between that word and blood in our bodies, and also the bloodlines of the rivers, connected to our life. And I just found that just very those reflections to be very beautiful and profound, and sort of repeated themselves throughout the collection. And a couple of times you also repeat this image of your grandfather on his deathbed, being helped up to go to the door and to look at the land. And that image really resonated, and it sort of comes up a couple of times. And it's very, very compelling. And so I think that within all of that, there's a whole worldview that's encompassed within those themes and those narratives. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that. within the collection about that worldview that you're reflecting on and bringing forward in the narrative.
Did everybody hear me okay with this? Okay. It feels funny for me to be sitting down. I'm going to stand up. I want to see my audience. There, I can see all of it. I've been walking the land since I was toddler with my parents and, going, snaring rabbits with my mom and learning to spot an elk across the river and picking beer bottles for 30 miles with my father and going to the store to sell the beer bottles and the pop bottles and also walking the land with my siblings to catch gophers. They're a delicacy in my community. Maybe not yours. Some people say we killed them for their tails and made 5 cents or something like that. But anyhow, no, I've been walking it for a long time. I've been a hiker with my husband these last few years. We walked across the country here in Saskatchewan with the Saskatchewan Folklore Society. And so I've seen a lot of Saskatchewan on foot. One time we covered 108 miles from Cypress Hills to, what is that place? Fort Walsh. And I wept and wept because 108 miles is a long walk. And there's a lot of history in this province, a lot of murderers' history, and I didn't walk for that. It's too painful to walk for history coming from one perspective. And so I walked because I remember my grandparents. My mushroom, he mentioned, used to walk around behind a plow when I was growing up, those handheld plows and behind his horses. And yes, the memory of my grandfather being walked to the door off his deathbed and looking out the door with my uncles holding him up stayed with me from the age of 16. And I don't know if he was greeting the land or saying goodbye to the land because he lived it. And, in the last few years, we've hiked across different countries as well. And it's just so releasing, so emotionally releasing, because it's just taking one step at a time and breathing and just enjoying the landscape in front of you and seeing the faces in the rocks and in the mountains and looking at the hills. You just wave like that. And you and I and everybody else on this planet are made from the dust of the stars. And that's where we're going to return to, dust. And I'm not afraid of it. At least she says so bravely. But who knows? Who knows? So it is so much part of me, and I don't know how to separate myself from the land. It's where I get my inspiration, my solitude. And I love coming into the city, but after running around and doing all the 5-minute jobs that I need to do, I can hardly wait to get home. I live in the country with my partner, Peter, as most of you know. And I just love the country, and it's so much part of me. And yeah, like I said, Lisa's a fine writer, by the way.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, I'll stand up too. Okay, so you sort of started to touch on maybe a little bit of what I'm going to make a comment about, but then I'm going to sort of move a little bit away from that. So birth, rebirth, death, and transition. So you talked about the the dust of the stars. They're all really significant repeated themes in the book. And I really found in those early poems, some of the lines about birth just so beautiful and just so full of like physicality and sensualness as well. And also, in that being sort of quite dreamlike. And so you write about dreams informing your work. And I just wonder if you can say a little bit about your creative process and other processes and around sort of the dreams and the way that you just sort of work with that creative process and the gifts, I guess, that come from it.
Usually I write between 3 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning. That's in my past. As I age, I'm sleeping till 8. I've become rather lazy. But it's an interesting evolution in terms of, I was thinking about it this morning. My most creative time is when the moon is just starting to develop her belly. It's a really interesting, I don't know if does anybody else have the, do you have PMS? Does anybody else have that cycle with the moon? I just, I've been following it for a long, long time. I used to have that bad PMS and I could just relate it to the moon. Anyway, it's my most creative time, and I'm a dreamer. I dream constantly of all kinds of things, and I work those dreams, those images into my poetry. And sometimes they're not very pleasant dreams. Sometimes I'm jealous in my dreams and I beat up on my husband and say, "Who's that Carol girl?" but I love all these dreams, you know, they're so informative for me. They tell me if I'm feeling insecure, or if, you know, when I started to write, they prophesized my travels, my journey to different countries. And I wouldn't know that until I got there going, oh yeah, that happened. I would have dreams of sweat lodges in Rome, for example, and which was really weird for me. When I was in Rome, I'd be building a sweat lodge and trying to find wood and sticks to build a lodge in the middle of Rome, and going to Belize and going into the caves and finding there was cadavers up in the caves, and I'm going, I had that dream before I got there, and it really freaked me out. That I would find skeletons in this cave as we walked up the water. And when I was younger, before I sort of got my act together, I say sort of got my act together because I'm 70 years old and you can still trigger me. But I'm actually over 70, and I've come to think of it. But anyhow, I used to dream of snakes, black snakes in the water. And I never understood except they frightened me. And eventually, as I got my act together and started mending and sewing my scars and putting myself together, those dreams dissipated. They just died. But you know, when dreams are so valuable, I just cannot discount them. And if you don't dream, drink a lot of water before you go to bed. So you'll wake up in the middle of your nightmare. But yeah, so yeah, just work them in. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, so as I was preparing for this evening, I was making a lot of notes and I was writing down quotes and I was preparing all of these really elaborate questions where I was like quoting your work and, you know, gonna ask you these questions. And I thought, well, I can't sit here and quote Louise Halfe to Louise Halfe. Like, that's just not gonna work out, you know, like that's just so silly. So I stopped doing that. So this is now my cue to ask you to read a little bit from your work so we can hear it in your own words.
Was there anything you were interested in?
Well, yeah, I'll let you pick. I mean, I love the poetry and I love the poems, but I also love the profound insights within the prose. So I'm gonna let you pick. Should we move this?
Yeah, I think that would be
Over?
a good idea.
I can. Okay.
Thank you. I find essays really, really hard to read. I'm going to attempt a little bit of it, but 220, page 220, if you have that book, it is about when I was working with a bunch of women in Calgary doing a presentation, and they wanted to know about womanhood. And my response to them was this: educate, educate, educate. We shared a story till we are dragging our tongues across the kitchen floor. Bone weary, throats clogged with settler goodwill, we must educate, educate, educate. Lives bundled to view in museums, treated like walking cadavers, we challenge the deaf and blind who come with eyes closed, expecting pat answers or pretty parcels in exchange for hard, complicated questions. Orange shirts do not erase the beatings, the rapes, the crippling memories. Cree leaving our mouths, ceremonies clinging in memory, both drowned by nunnish howls, has forced us to battle for a niche in this whiteout. The smoke buckskin people were once provided for by this green earth. Now we persevere, gather, and hunt for a better future. So I want to share a story about an event that took place at the University of Saskatchewan several months ago. In doing so, I wish to share the teachings around a woman's journey through her moon cycle and the importance of heeding protocol around ceremony. As you listen, you may note that the woman's physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual makeup is very much related to the earth, nature, and life. The University of Saskatchewan on the campus newspaper of September 13, 2013, printed a letter written by a male English professor in response to an email sent to the campus community to invite participants in a non-campus pipe ceremony. Here is what the professor wrote. I was unaware until receiving an email about the September 3rd pipe ceremony that some Aboriginal belief systems register the same horror of women's genitalia as do Abrahamic religions. The instructions in a male caution that women on their moon time must not participate in the ceremony in various ways, apparently because their menstruating bodies might somehow render the sacred objects in that ceremony filthy. And if not menstruating, women were instructed not to sit cross-legged. I would have liked to attend, but I felt to do so would be to endure the subordination of women. It's time to move beyond superstition and fully embrace the modern world in which we all live. There are several considerations that frame my reaction to that controversy. First, the sender of the original mail invitation did not clarify why menstruating women were asked to exclude themselves during ceremony. Second, it was not the responding professor's responsibility to give his own particular cultural explanation. Third, a First Nations traditional knowledge keeper ought to have been consulted by the sender of the email as well by the professor to clarify the reasons for the request. Fourth, printing this misinterpretation and dismay before this clarification created unnecessary and damaging consequences for the Aboriginal woman's ceremony. In Cree, the word for woman, isquel, is derived from iskadel, or fire. It is a woman who carried the spark of life. Further, the related word is squat dem, door. So women are also the door to life. I have 4 grandmothers. They were sisters. My grandmothers were pagans, although by the time I arrived, they had mixed their paganism with the rosary. Pagan means country dweller, which places my Nilkamak on the earth and in relationship with the land. These women not only kept the home fires burning, but had the roles that extended beyond the significant and substantial work at home. Each of my grandmothers was a healer. They used plants and other medicines. 2 were midwives, and the youngest was a storyteller. The latter kept all the family members informed of community events and what their wakumaganak or relatives were up to. 2 of the grandmothers ran a sweat lodge, Matutsan. Matutsan loosely means the place where one cries with all their relatives, or where the entire world witnesses their limitations. The sweat lodge is equally divided into 2, the one seen above the ground and the unseen half beneath the earth. It is divided again in half for the men and the women. Many ceremonies are divided between men and women. Each has their gifts and their roles and contribute according to the well-established protocol. Women are encouraged to wear a long skirt, dress, or wraparound. And if none of these are available, they can use a blanket or a shawl for almost any ceremony. They are encouraged to practice modesty in their dress and the way they seat themselves on the ground. They must also exclude themselves from ceremony during their moon time, as it is time for preparation for a new life and a time of power. This expression is called manatsituin, being respectful to oneself and to others. Women are discouraged from sitting cross-legged as it opens their doorway and a place of life-giving. And that's just part of the essay. You can go and read it yourself. In Cree, there's no word for forgiveness. In Cree, we say, Puneta. Puneta means put the fire of thought out. So, if I've insulted you, sorry. I'm going to read 78 and 79. You know, a few years ago when I was 6 to 9, I walked the West Coast Trail with my husband. It is an incredible walk. I ended up doing it only for 3 days because I sprained my ankle and I was on anticoagulants, so I was bruised from head to foot. Shouldn't have been on that trail, but I wanted to do it because I was 6 to 9. So this one is in love. I am love with trees, the way I am in love with my husband. The way he crawls bear-like into the cavity of my shoulder. The way he wraps his branches around my neck. I love the trees, the way I love my children, the way they bring me to my knees. I love the trees the way I love my cats, their independence and constant exploration, widening what they see. I love the trees the way my dogs race across the fields, follow the trail to somewhere. I love the trees attached to the earth, the way they breathe and murmur for all of us. Sheila Roberts was asking me, do you hug trees, Louise? And I said, yes, I hug trees. In the Sundance, that's what we do. And she said, people said I was crazy. And I said, well, Sheila, if you're crazy, I am too. So just one more essay here, if I can find it. I'm usually much more prepared than this, but she told me pick your own. Where did she go? Okay. Lisa. Lisa. Okay. Cultural Read the Goose. I think you guys are gonna love this book. I certainly do, but then I'm the author, right? Yeah. Isn't this awful? Have you got some questions?
Yes.
Yes?
How long did it take you to walk from Cypress Hills to Fort Walsh?
I think that was
108 miles.
What's the whole distance? But it was about a week.
about a week.
I was afraid she did it in one day.
Yeah.
Did you avoid the massacre site or did you visit?
No, I didn't. I visited deliberately and I put some tobacco out. Because when you give tobacco, David, it actually means, kêhtê-aya actually means the echo of the prayer of the heart. So you and I are echoing back and forth our prayer into the great mystery. Yeah. No, it's like there was another place that I found really moving. It was called Old Wives Lake. It was Old Wives Lake, yeah, where they were massacred by another tribe. And what the old woman did was because they knew there was going to be a raid, they sent the children and the mothers ahead with some of the warriors, and the old woman stayed and made a fire, so that they fooled the raiders. You know, can you imagine killing a whole bunch of women? Old women. Anyhow, that's the way it is, right? It's history and is in Saskatchewan all over the place. And it's difficult. Okay. I can't find it for the life of me, so I'm just gonna read you another quote. This one, I was standing in front of Norval Morrison's painting. Everybody must know Norval Morrison, right? He's a great native painter. He went places where my heart trembled. His paintings spoke a dream that is not mine. Sight is only seeing what it wishes me to unravel. He captured his journey with the dance of a paintbrush. Bones pierced his flesh. A third eye born at birth watched from where his soul entered. I climbed Cheap Mountain where the little people stole my scarf. I searched the bush in my attempt to find the little culprits. He was suspended from a tree. His guts released the fear that lived inside. Birds tempted him with berries, pecked his feet, encouraged him to run. He hung steadfast. The guardians then released him into a turbulent water. I sat on the mountain's back, its face etched with fury. I offered tobacco, shared with it my pipe. The turtle's tail was split, waving as if its nostrils were testing the air. Turtle claws scraped the underbelly of his throat. When I was sleeping, Grandfather Asani called to wake me up. The water below me asked where I was going. He went underwater repeatedly, where Wisaketa swam. I would not survive such depths. I have no gills, my fins are too weak. I am fodder to the underwater creatures. Snakes entwined his body, bit his heart. He was unafraid. They listened as song uncoiled from his mouth, from his hands. I too have sung to snakes, watched them mesmerized as the drumbeat of my quest revealed its secrets. He slayed the horned one that arrived with the black robe, savages that carried the black book. He had many visitors from the air, from the underground dens, from the waters. They spoke to him in a language from where we all spoke one tongue. Loons crowded around him while he was in the darkness, guided by his interior fire. He was woman, man. Turtle Island is balance in his hand. So, any questions?
Found the
Which one?
The one you were looking for, I believe. That the one you were looking for?
No.
No? Okay.
I was looking for the one on the West Coast Trail.
Oh,
Yeah, but anyhow, it's been a great pleasure, and it's been fun. Let's put it that way. Writing is a lot of work, hey? I mean, people think we're sitting leisurely in our dens, just dreaming away, when in fact it is work. But it is the most wonderful experience, and I'm so grateful for the readers. And I'm grateful for the supporters, and I'm grateful to the elders who have guided me on this journey, because there's been many, and there's a lot of teachings from the elders in this book that I'm passing on, because it's gonna die if I don't pass on. Yeah. Hi, gracias now.
I feel like, oops, that was loud. I feel like we have some time, so we could do a couple more questions and then do like audience questions. Do we have time, Ben?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so here's one. You're a storyteller, Louise, and you write about your coming to understand this role in your youth and then having it reaffirmed by elders as you sort of moved along. Can you talk about your role as a storyteller and the responsibility in that role, and how you've seen that role evolving for yourself over your lifetime?
You know, the belief is that the sacred legends are to be told in the wintertime, and it is true. And a reason for that is because we have time to be quiet and to listen and to reflect. We're not out looking for berries or meat to survive on. We're, because we've been busy in the fall doing this, making the pemmican, and just preparing for the hard winters ahead of us. So the stories are told in the evenings, and I remember my mother and father, especially with the rolling head story, Chichipistagon, and you'll find it sort of an analysis about the story in here. And Chichipistagon is the rolling head story that I grew up predominantly. I mean, I know some Wisagets stories, but this one is particularly important because it's part of the creation story. And there's 4 years to be told the creation story. I haven't earned that 4 years yet. I only have bits and pieces of the storytelling, and it's fun. I can only tell about Peter's mishaps.
Okay, I do sort of have a question, or what I think is a hard question. And I think you're a very brave writer and a very generous writer. And you talk and you write about, breaking a lot of taboos in your writing over your career, over the career of your writing. And I think that that's a real dilemma for a lot of Indigenous writers, is to think about what our accountability is to our communities, and also having that deep sense of accountability. And I'm just wondering if you can talk about how you balance that sense of accountability to community, but also needing to fulfill your purpose as an artist and a writer and a storyteller.
I want to show you a photograph in here that was taken by a professional photographer, and it is an article I wrote for the Walrus, and it is about Atawapas. How do you say that word?
Halfe-Sky.
There you go. Did you hear Atawapaska? And when I looked at the photographs, I've never been there myself, but I know what it's like to live on a reserve. And what I'm hearing about the reserve right now, back home and everywhere else, is there's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse. And now, and where there's murder going on, it's become, what is that word? Lateral violence is turned inward rather than outward. And it's like we've turned on our own people, and we're making the drug industry and the cocaine industry richer. And I'm trying to tell my people, why are you making those people rich and killing our people? Anyhow, I found this particular photograph disturbing because it's an older man who is glue sniffing.
What page?
Page 246. And it was hard to look at that photograph because I thought, I'm going to get flack from my community. But I can tell you right now that it's still happening, not only in my community, but in the streets of Saskatoon, and I'm not going to hide it. So I'm much prepared for that flack, including the sexual violence and physical violence that's happening all over the world. And we don't even have to read it in our community. It's in this community. It's happening. And what angers me, and I'm going to talk to Hollywood about this, is now the nipple is being shown as if men have never seen nipples. Isn't that the truth? Like these women in Hollywood are dressed in skimpy little dresses with no modesty, no self-respect. Anyway, I can go on and on about those bitches. Anyway, so, but like, those are the things I want to talk about to educate our people. We don't have to follow the norm. We don't have to follow the norm, so I'm not a follower. And I've been in the margins of society for a long time, from my community and from white mainstream community. And I belong all over the place. That is the irony. And yeah. Peter's going.
I was gonna say here. Okay, I only have one more question and then I think I'll turn it back to Brent for the Q&A with the audience. But I wanted to say that I took a great deal of hope and inspiration out of this book. So you mentioned the story about the dream in Rome about not being able to find the willows to build the lodge, but having a dream that you found other types of sticks and things, and understanding that to be that your culture is within you and you take it wherever you go. And I find that very inspiring. Or that again image of the bears hunched over and gathering our roots. So as an Indigenous writer who, I write endlessly about trying to reclaim and find my way. So I find that really inspiring and quite hopeful to read those ideas and those words about reconnection. And it brings me a lot of joy and a lot of hope, as well as beauty and longing to read your work. So on that note, my last question is, what gives you hope right now? Hope for Indigenous artists, for knowledge keepers, and for the next generation?
I'm always hopeful that people will, we're in really difficult times with the, what's happening down south and across the ocean with all the wars and whatnot. And I worry about us here in Canada. I worry about my people, and I really worry about my people. And I know that there's a lot of successes out there, but I see we still have a long way to go. And for me, I can't spend a whole lot of time in those dark places. I have to prepare for my own demise and do the best I can. And in the process, leave the teachings that I wasn't taught. Like one of the things that as I was a young woman, I would want to ask older people, what is it like for you? How did you succeed? And where are you at in your life now? There was a woman who had lost her husband, an older woman, and I asked her, what's it like to lose your lifetime partner? Because I just couldn't imagine it. I've been with my husband for 52 years, and I can't imagine it. And she said, Louise, you get used to it. And I thought, I don't know, but my therapist, my psychiatrist, before he died, he told me, get used to it. Wow. I miss him terribly. So there you go. Is there any questions? I mean, there's a lot of material to cover in this book, and it's so hard to read essays, but it's been, I've been so blessed, and I'm so grateful and gracious for the life that I've led. It's been magical. It's been painful. It's been incredibly rewarding. And I thank you all for coming. Really, really do. Thank you all. Aye.
Thank you, Louise. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. I'll run the microphone over to you.
Louise, can you talk a little bit about the people who've influenced you as a poet?
David, that's an interesting question. When I was 16, I was writing poetry. Nobody influenced me back then. When I was living in Meadow Lake and I was keeping a journal, nobody influenced me. It was just a journal. And the greatest influence was that grandfather who taught me the syllabics in my dream place. I love all kinds of poets. And one of my favorite poets is a book called A Kind of a Scar by Evan Boland. She's an Irish poet. And I've been very fortunate to meet all kinds of poets since I was published, starting with Sage Hill Writing Experience when it was up in that, towards Humboldt. What's it called?
Sage Hill.
Yeah, no, Sage Hill, but it was an old army base, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah. And that's where I met Patrick. Where I met Patrick, Patrick Lane. And I guess in one way he did influence me by the fact that he spoke the truth. And boy, his truth was dark sometimes. And I go, I can't believe you did that, Patrick, you know? But I love the truth. And because they do happen. What he writes about happens. And it must have been hard not to shy away from that, you know, to know that other people are reading the possibilities of what happened in his life, or maybe he fabricated it. I don't know. But when I read his poems, it was like he's speaking the truth. These things happen. Boys get sexually abused by boys, and men get sexually abused by other men, you know, and that's a reality, and he talks about it. Thank you for that.
Louise, could you talk a little bit about the difference for you in writing poetry and writing prose, and in revising those two genres? And I'm particularly curious about any role that might be played in revising in terms of hearing the words for yourself by reading them out loud.
Prose writing is hard for me. I find because I work so intuitively with poetry, it just comes out. Prose writing, I really have to think about it, and I have to have a good editor. Peter's my first editor. And I find in prose writing, there's just a whole lot of telling. It's not so much, whereas poetry, in my view, is like you're problem solving yourself. You're not telling your reader, this is the answer. Whereas in prose writing, I think you're being told the answer, you know, and when I'm writing poetry, after I've completed it, I'll let it sit for a bit, and then I'll walk it. I'll walk my walk to talk. And when I stumble in my poetry, it means I haven't got the right word. And it just doesn't work. So does that answer your question, Susan? And oh, you asked me about love. Is love a trickster? You asked me about that, and I'm sorry I failed to answer. Yes, it is. This was interesting for me to contemplate on, because I was thinking, when a child is born, the minute it's out of the womb, they're put on the breast, and mothers eventually start lactating if they do. Is that love, or is that instinctual reaction to that child? Because some mothers don't love their child for many reasons. So, but I think that love is a kind of a trickster. It, boy, it sharpens us, and then it takes away. I'm afraid it takes away. Any other questions?
Misty over there.
What is your favorite passage in the book?
My favorite passage? I'll tell you what isn't my favorite passage. A friend of mine wrote me a letter, and she said, I want to see an oncologist. And he was so young, I could smell the baby pablum on his breath. I loved it so much, that line. I said, can I steal it? And she said, Louise, I stole it myself. Well, I don't have a favorite passage in my book. I guess my favorite passage maybe is my love poem to my husband. Anything else?
I don't think we'd mind if you read that poem to us.
You're gonna die. I'll see if I can find it, David. It has to do with the West Coast Trail, where, when I sprained my ankle and it was raining really, really hard, and, my pants got loose because I lost some weight during the West Coast Trail and I was forever pulling it up. And, I had to hoist my leg up with my pant to get on the boardwalks because it was so swollen. And I couldn't find my headlight. So Peter used the headlight and walked us through that trail. But, you know, I'm so blessed to meet a fantastic man in my life, except I do have to pull the halo down to his ass once in a while. So he's not a saint. Let's see if I can find that. Is anybody, Peter, did you find it?
160, page 169, I think.
158.
169.
Okay. Okay, here it is. It comes down up here. He has turquoise blue eyes, a slender mouth that offers old wisdom. His ducktail hair flips around his large ears. He inherited the tender touch of his father's large gloved hands. In sleep, he purrs spoons around my body. On the res, year after year, he crawled out of the fasting lodge. The old man assigned him to splash and sing. Another painted his face with black bear paws, streaks that they will be forever brothers. In the deep Belizean forest, we listened to the splash of iguanas as we steered our canoes downstream through the jungle. We stopped at the falls to dive from a 30-foot cliff. Waiting at the bottom, he encouraged me to leap while my knees trembled. We quietly pitched our tent, feasted and cozied into the jungle's night, not knowing what time it was. We fell into a profound sleep at 7 p.m. In China and South Korea, he accompanied 5 females, slid down a banister at the warrior's tomb, joined a dance in the park with an old woman whose radio blared tunes from the 60s. On the Great Wall, he extended a hand, hoisted me up the steep steps as we navigated the battlements and towers. Year after year, on the Saskatchewan prairie walks, while I trudged ahead, he stayed behind, honoring his personhood and the call of his profession to care for those that lagged. In the mountains, we leaned into the steep incline to view Lake Minnewaca below. Grizzly scat marked the trails and deer watched as we slipped by. From the Neben Lake to the Churchill River, we lifted, carried, or hauled our canoe to the portage of the swampy trails. We camped by waterfalls, rapids, and lake shores. Caught in a thunderous deluge of rain, unable to see, we huddled into a hill, a thin tarp over us. On another river, a submerged tree captured our canoe. He shouted instructions to pivot and circle in the flowing water that wished to embrace us. On the West Coast Trail, he guided us through the wet night, his headlamp shining. He'd watch, wait, extend a hand to pull me over the wet logs. Under a rain-soaked tarp I slept while he took watch. Before the Sundance tree, our daughter danced and pierced with him. Ropes skewered to his chest, he released himself in a final backward dash. Blood ran down as he leaned in to whisper his love. The old man had said, "This man loves you more than life itself." And that is my partner. Thank you.
We're just about out of time, but we had one more question from the audience. I'll just run the mic to you.
Well, I can't follow that. I was wondering, Louise, if there were any poems or essays that you looked back on that you hadn't, looked at or thought about for a while that surprised you, anything that kind of stuck out or anything that's changed.
I think one of the most difficult essays in here is about, there's a lot of Cree in it, and I'm still learning the Cree myself. I don't write Cree. I write it phonetically, the way it sounds. So it's difficult for me to read the Cree, but it's about the birthing process, and it's a really heavy. I find it a heavy essay, and I can't think of it offhand where it's at, but it's one that I will repeatedly look at myself because it's so full of mystery about the birthing and the placenta and all of that. But it's rich with language, and the language shows itself how it's related to so much more than what you and I see. Because the placenta is a pillow in my language. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I think with that, we'll wrap it up. If anyone has any, that is so loud. Hold on. Okay. If anyone has any other questions or comments, I'm sure Louise would be happy to answer them up at the signing table. I wanted to say thank you again to Louise. Thank you, Lisa, for being here to host. And just to close us out, I'll share a comment from the chat. This is from Elizabeth Phillips, another great poet. She'll be here next week. Congrats, Louise. Looking forward to reading the book. Love your truth-telling, non-conforming voice. And thank you for sharing it with us tonight.
Thank you.
Right.
Now I'll take my list.